Johnson. Joshua Phelps.
Yeah, thank you.
To get re-elected the second time by a bigger margin, I just think speaks volumes to the fact that people really are looking for good stewardship of tax dollars. In starting out my second term, in keeping with a promise to put the issues that should be on the front burner regardless of the political consequences, in keeping with the promise to what are we spending money on and what are we getting for the money that we're spending, I really wanted to take a hard look at the war on drugs, and I wanted to include legalization as a potential alternative. Came at it from the standpoint of half of what we spend on law enforcement, half of what we spend on the courts, and half of what we spend on the prisons is drug-related. And what are we getting for that? We're arresting 1.8 million people a year in this country on drug-related crime, and we now have 2.3 million people behind bars in this country. We have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world. So in looking at this issue for a very short amount of time, and I would ask you to look at this issue if you haven't already, but in looking at this issue for a fairly short amount of time, I came to the conclusion that 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that's not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that ought to be the focus. So I advocated then, and I do now, legalizing marijuana. Legalize marijuana. Control it, regulate it. I guess I'm just a taxation guy, tax it. I think there's a palatability right now to the notion of taxing marijuana, and I gotta say that that tax will be minute compared to the positive impact that goes along with it. But regulate it, control it, tax it. It is never going to be legal to smoke pot, become impaired, get behind the wheel of a car, or do harm to others. And it's never going to be legal for kids to smoke pot or buy pot. You can really make a case that a lot fewer kids will be using marijuana once it's legalized. And with regard to all the other drugs, I advocate harm reduction strategies, the things I think we really care about. Reducing death, disease, crime, corruption. In a nutshell, looking at the drug problem first as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue. I got out of office.
It's great every time. Well, thanks. Thank you all for, thank you all for being here.
People that know me, I like to have a nice pint of Guinness every now and then. That was illegal for about 20 years, I think, after the wars. And I know a lot of patriots out there who are responsible marijuana users. And one of their advocates is Steve Epstein. He's the attorney and founder of Mass Cannabis Reform Coalition. That's www.masscann.org. Steve.
Thank you for that kind introduction. When they spoke in this room 237 years ago, they didn't use microphones, and I don't need a microphone either. We've been at this since 1989. And when that protest occurred 237 years ago, it was more than about a protest about taxation without representation. It was a protest about a bailout of the East India Company. The East India Company was about to go bankrupt. They had too much tea. I am here to talk about another plan, the cannabis plan, which in English is known as hemp. We use that acronym for activists. Help eliminate marijuana prohibition. Those ships brought the tea here wouldn't have gotten here without the rope and is prohibited. But I can tell you this, in colonial times, hemp, leaves, and flowers were being put into pipes as much as tobacco. And in the early part of the last century, racism played a role, as did competing economic interests. As I put this wood pulp paper in the technology to turn hemp into paper with 4 times more paper per acre and 1/4 the amount of pollution was developed. Just as this plant was about to replenish itself and replenish the nation, Roosevelt put a tax on it. And that shows the limits of the Constitution, of the rights that are protected by this document.
Very good. Very good.
A state senator who is the anchor of liberty in this state, whether he likes it or not, is Senator Bob Hedlund. He's also one of the most popular state senators, elected with 75% of the vote. Almost impossible in this state, especially for a Republican. He's the Senate Minority Whip. He also helped us to defeat the pandemic bill. Bob Hedlund.
Thank you. It's an honor to be on stage with so many great patriots and be in a room full of so many great patriotic activists. Thank you for all being